You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 2nd of September 2013. Leicester child prostitution trial, 6 men jailed. Britain giving in to Sharia council, says Norway's anti-immigration leader. EU tells Britain to make it easier for jobless migrants to find work. Convicted Romanian rapist did it again 3 months after arriving in UK. Socialists crash and bash in school loot raid. Italy, hundreds of shipbuilding workers to be laid off in Palermo. Desperation sinks in as a man robs bank for $1 in bid to receive health care in prison. British soldiers attacked New York police officer. Price of oil falls below $107 per barrel as tensions over Syria's civil war fall. Thought for the day, it has come to pass at last. And finally, Darth Vader to jelly beans, that's no way to address a lady. UK news. Leicester child prostitution trial, 6 men jailed. 6 men have been jailed for paying or offering to pay a vulnerable and damaged 16-year-old girl for sex. Leicester Crown Court heard she'd been used as a sexual commodity and left with internal injuries. The girl told the men she was a prostitute, but the judge said they must have realised she was vulnerable and should have helped her. The men, whose ages range from 20 to 39, were jailed for in between 8 months and 5 years. Britain giving in to Sharia council, says Norway's anti-immigration leader. Britain is giving in to the claims of Sharia councils, according to the leader of Norway's anti-immigration party, which is poised to enter government later this month. In an interview with the Daily Telegraph, Siv Jensen, the 44-year-old leader of the Progress Party, who cites Baroness Thatcher as her inspiration, said, "What I have seen that the UK has done is to give in to the claims of Sharia councils, and I don't think we should give in to that. In Norway we have one law, and that is Norwegian law." Ms Jensen, who's unmarried, said Britain was suffering the results of earlier mistakes in its immigration policy. Ms Jensen's party has grown to become Norway's 3rd largest since it was launched in the 1970s, pushing a libertarian economic and social policy combined with a vehemently anti-immigrant, anti-Islamic stand. Ahead of parliamentary elections this Sunday, she could now enter into coalition for the first time with the more centrist Conservatives, who hold a wafer-thin poll lead over their rivals Labour. World at 8, good for her. Perhaps Europe might lead the way in handling the Muslim epidemic. EU tells Britain to make it easier for jobless migrants to find work. Brussels has demanded that Britain makes it easier for the unemployed from other European Union countries to find jobs here. The EU Commission said that while some states suffer much higher levels of unemployment, the rest of the EU should open their doors to help. It wants new rules to force the government to better advise migrants about their rights. They would also make it easier for unions and migrant groups to launch legal action if they think foreign workers are suffering discrimination. World at 8 states, "The sooner we leave this ruination of a big brother regime called the EU, the better. It's not better to suffer in silence and find that we as a country have our hands tied behind our backs. Not only do we have to accept massive numbers of strangers, but we have to give them jobs as well. Now you can see what the EU has in store for us." Convicted Romanian rapist did it again 3 months after arriving in United Kingdom. A convicted Romanian rapist brutally attacked a young woman in her own home within weeks of arriving in Britain. George Joseph Blaj, 20, fled to the UK after Romanian judges released him 3 years into a prison sentence for horrific rape and 3 robberies in his home country. Less than 3 months after arriving in Britain, he broke into the woman's home in the early hours and throttled her until she was unconscious. When she awoke, she begged him to take her money, but he refused, flashing a knife at her, battering her with a spade and subjecting her to a violent rape. Jailing him for 15 years, Judge Rupert Mayo branded Blaj a rapist of the most extreme nature. MP Michael Ellis hit out at Romanian authorities, claiming they did not inform the UK that Blaj had a serious conviction. World at 8 says, The final fault lies with us in allowing him in the first place and not deporting him before trial. Eastern European countries, like many others, just send us their evil, their crippled and their village idiots to look after. We'll be paying for this oversexed retard for the next 15 years. Who is the fool? European news. Socialists crash and bash in school loot raid. We want to draw attention to the situation of the 2 million Andalusians in poverty, said activists involved in the robbery. A Robin Hood-style band of Spanish left-wing activists openly stole cartloads of school supplies from a supermarket on Friday, promising to distribute them to needy children. After alerting media, more than 200 members of the Sindicato Andaluz de Trabajadores, Andalusian Union of Workers, emerged from a Carrefour supermarket in the southern city of Seville, pushing about 10 shopping carts brimming with exercise books, pens, felt tips and dictionaries, said an AFP photographer at the scene. They loaded the back-to-school supplies into vans and left. Spain's Interior Ministry vowed to identify and detain members of the union who robbed the supermarket so as to bring them to justice. The Interior Ministry will act severely and firmly in this matter, a ministry spokesman said. Carrefour was not immediately available for comment. Italy, hundreds of shipbuilding workers to be laid off in Palermo. Palermo, almost half the workforce at Italian state-controlled shipbuilder Fincantieri's Palermo yard are to be temporarily laid off or have their hours cut due to lack of orders, the FIOM trade union said on Wednesday. A total of 200 out of 480 workers at Fincantieri's Palermo shipyard will be affected, an increase of 40 from the pre-holiday period. Out of the total workforce, just 50 people are now working full-time, the lowest ever number according to the union. Orders for new ships and refitting have been hit by Italy's most protracted economic crisis in over 20 years. The country has been in recession since autumn 2011 and it's only predicted to make a weak return to growth in 2014. World news. Desperation sinks in as a man robs bank for $1 in bid to receive health care in prison. No matter how much assistance taxpayers provide, there is always going to be a segment of the population that is beyond help. A case in point recently occurred in Oregon. According to Oregon Live, a 50-year-old homeless man recently walked into a bank, held it up for a single $1, then sat down and waited for the police to show up. The suspect, Timothy Deal Alsip, was taken into custody by sheriff's deputies without incident. The report said he was booked into the Clackamas County Jail on suspicion of second-degree robbery, with bail set at $250,000. Whatever. What is clear, though, is that this robbery was not one of ill intent or for self-enrichment, but of desperation. And it's just the latest sign that in this economy, Americans are becoming increasingly disparaged and discouraged. British soldiers attack New York police officer. 6 British soldiers have been arrested in New York after an off-duty NYPD policeman was beaten up and robbed outside a bar. The soldiers were arrested when police arrived at the scene around 4:40 a.m. on Friday, 30th of August 2013. The Royal Regiment of Scotland soldiers reportedly became embroiled in a row after travelling to Manhattan to play in a rugby match against the NYPD. Police said 3 or 4 men lashed out in the early hours of Friday morning when the officer started chatting to a woman who was with the troops. One soldier is accused of grabbing the policeman's mobile phone and a chain round his neck when he attempted to call 911, the Daily Record reported. The soldiers, Iosefo Yavala, Ilya Kanini Radera, Thomas Shute, Feliti Vunisarati, Bosizi Kurala and Joeli Raduva were arrested when police arrived at the scene at around 4:40 a.m. Yavala was charged with robbery and assault following the fight outside the Mercury Bar in the Murray Hill area of Manhattan. The other 5 were each charged with a single count of assault. The 6 soldiers, members of the regimental rugby team, were due to play at the Mystic River Rugby Club in Boston yesterday. They could face discharge if they are found to have breached the Army's strict code of conduct. World Date comments. Well, fee fi fo fum. Where is the blood of an Englishman here? Is it just me, or do these names sound vaguely foreign? What's happening to the Scots Army intake? Once again everyone is calling them British instead of English, thank God. We give British passports out at the drop of a hat. Perhaps they come from Papua or Africa. Sounds like they had too much to drink to me. The Americans can at least deport them, which is more than we can do. Price of oil falls below $107 per barrel as tensions over Syria's civil war fall. The price of oil dropped as the likelihood of an imminent US attack against Syria diminished. Benchmark crude for October delivery was down to $106.62 per barrel at late afternoon Bangkok time in electronic trading on the New York Mercantile Exchange. President Barack Obama has had difficulty convincing the world about the need to take action against Syria's government in response to an alleged chemical attack last month that the US says killed at least 1,429 civilians. That number is significantly higher than the death toll of 355 provided by the aid group Doctors Without Borders. World at 8 says, it's all in the plan, my friends, it's all in the plan. Thought for the day, it's come to pass at last. To everything there is a time, so it said, and the time has come for what I predicted many moons ago. It is all out of the diplomatic bag now, the race in which the media decides just how far up the Islamic fundament it can go with the laws of the land following up close and personal. I'm talking about the conglomeration of sexual abuse arrests and trials that we've been subjected to for the last couple of years, most of which are too little and too late. But there is to be noted a huge amount of differing circumstances surrounding most of these child abuse reports. The latest is the one that occurred in Leicester last year and about which there was a riot in that town carried out by members of the Sikh community who are just as hot on their rights in a foreign country as the Muslim element, and in this case the laws of the land have stepped in and, contrary to the normal elusive sentences and jurists who have been got at in one way or another, all these men have been found guilty, but their sentences all vary and no mention is made of deportation afterwards. I'm not disputing their guilt, but are they any more guilty than the rapists and murderers of Charlene Downs, aged 13, who ended up in a kebab, and the multitude of Muslim men and boys who have been carrying out the abductions and so-called grooming of girls much younger than that, the youngest recorded officially being 11. Now the two most important things on this Leicester case is that the girl involved is a Sikh and she was 16, which to me is the age of consent, but she's classed as vulnerable. But she isn't an 11-year-old white child, and these Muslim rapists have received almost punitive sentences while the two Indians are relatively hefty. All 6 men have been jailed for paying or offering to pay a vulnerable and damaged 16-year-old girl for sex. Leicester Crown Court heard that she had been used as a sexual commodity and left with internal injuries. The men, whose ages range from 20 to 39, were jailed for between 8 and 5 years. Judge Michael Perk QC said, while it's fair to say that none of the defendants played any part in her decision to prostitute herself, it's equally true to say that anyone meeting her would immediately have realised that this was a vulnerable 16-year-old girl from a good Sikh family who was embarking upon a disastrous course of action. The girl, now 17, had been drinking alcohol to excess, smoking cannabis and self-harming, and said she needed to make money as her parents had threatened to throw her out. Wajid Usman got 2 years and was assaulted during an attack on the Mogul Durbar restaurant by members of the Sikh community, but of course this has not been reported as such, merely men attacked the restaurant, as the room above was being used as a sex parlour or happy house, and the Sikhs, unlike us Brits, don't put up with Muslim grooming gangs, as indeed do our establishment. Rakib Lakub was the first of the men to have sex with the victim after they met at a Diwali festival. He got 3 years. Then the 20-year-old introduced his 39-year-old friend Abidali Mubarak Ali, who received 5 years to the girl, and the three had sex together in a bed plus breakfast. Hamza Imtiaz Ali, 28, was the remaining Muslim named and shamed and got 2 years. Then we have the results of the police investigations, which appear to have included using the girl as bait, and the result: 2 Indians, glory be, to take the heat off the so-called Asians, but of course Indians are classed as Asians as well, aren't they? So we have Bharat Modwadia, 25, of Wickham Road, who was jailed for 16 months for paying for the sexual services of a child, inciting child pornography and trafficking the girl by driving her to a location for sex. And the cherry on the cake, some poor bugger who didn't even touch her was jailed for 8 months. Poor Chandresh Mistry, 37, of Berridge Lane, was jailed for attempting to pay for the sexual services of a child. He used Facebook to arrange to have sex with the girl, but they didn't have sex because he became aware of the police investigation. Now call me odd, and I'm the first on a personal level and, wearing my pro-fam hat, to really loathe these Muslim gangs and the way they go about their business. But 16 years old ain't a child, and the only reason this has hit the headlines is that she is a Sikh, and obviously young ethnic girls rate higher in our system of law than the hordes of real underage white children who have been and are continuing to be abducted and raped and their lives ruined. You will notice our media and indeed our judicial system favours Muslims. It doesn't matter how young many of our children have been and how damaged they are, they all seem to have come from broken homes and apparently ran the streets from which they were plucked. All absolutely rubbish and a media cover-up. Much like that loathsome journalist who's become the father of the child abuse scandals on which he didn't report for many years because of the right-wing element involved. In short, a coward but a clever manipulator of idiots. I can't recall any sentence being handed out that will not see the worst of these rapists out in a few years with their very clever lawyers and the Human Rights Brigade, whilst entire families are devastated and young lives ruined. Our young lives, that is. Whilst I have every sympathy for the Sikh family involved, they shouldn't rate higher in the eyes of the law than our own tribes, just to satisfy the multiculturalist ethos that is growing in prevalence in our country today. The same applies to the ridiculous elderly white celebs and the witch hunt going on back 50 years to try and find abused girls. I may sound tough, but get real, people. In those days young girls were standing in line to be abused and groped, and worse, by these guys. They were famous and the general population was not as jaded as indeed it now is. It was a race to the dressing rooms for most of them, regardless of age or sex, and if kiss and tell had not been frowned upon, they'd have all tried to make money out of their experiences well before now. Most are now elderly themselves, and most well over the age of consent at that time, which is still 16 in this country. A girl of 16 can marry, I know, because I was married at just 16 with my mother's consent. However, I couldn't drink and I couldn't vote until I was 18. The television presenters were almost having orgasms when the likes of Jim Davison were accused. Why? Because Jim has never bothered about the political correctness of his jokes. He left that to the so-called alternative humour louts to do, that theatre of humour that if you are ethnic, ugly or disabled, or merely overlarge, and prod fun at our colonialist past or the far right, you have automatically told a joke to fall on the ears of the well and truly politicised second-rate university audience. I find the upward hype by our establishment and media towards anything remotely Muslim nauseating in the extreme, and the sad fact this ethos is being played out, not only in our country but throughout Europe, is truly frightening. On TV plays, anything Muslim turns out to be good, anything white is usually a very flawed character, if not downright evil. Most, if not all, our advertising shows mixed-race couples in the foreground, and if this doesn't give the message we are here and here to stay, get over it, nothing will. And we're expected to accept, which is of course the byword of Islam. What is strange is that although our media lovingly promote Islam through the news and documentaries, very few Muslims actually appear on TV in the normal channels. We have other ethnic groups ad nauseum, but I suppose this is down to the fact that Muslims have their own channels and don't want to mix with ours. After all, we must accept it is only our country they want and our money. They don't want us at all, or rather only our children. I don't know what these Muslim guys are taking, but they seem to be rampant most of the time. No wonder their poor wives get sick of it and are happy to have them abduct underage girls, especially if it means making some money out of it. I've never believed their families know nothing. But even worse are our police. They'll happily spend hours on some idiotic so-called racist crime or happening, but give them a real rape crime that involves our Muslim friends and they run to the hills. Thus my sentiment that the Crown Prosecution Service is riddled with Muslims like a dog with fleas. Take the recent case of two CPS staff who swindled more than £1 million from the taxpayers and got jailed for 6 years only. One of whom was Tahir Mahmood, who suggested to his partner in crime Lisa Burrows they could run a taxi firm scam, which they did, but Mahmood made the clever move of changing his name to Joseph O'Neill to set up the account. And you tell me these people aren't clever. They've taken in the British government, the establishment, the media and for the most part the people, who I have, believe, given up the good fight because it isn't fashionable to be patriotic and unpolitically correct. We must not forget who we are. and the fact that Middle England still has the upper hand. We must not believe anything we hear or see on Islam, because it has been cleared by the government and it will be 70% untrue or doctored. The Muslims, more so than any other religion, are more dangerous than ever. Why? They seek to convert all to Islam. There's been a ruling put forward in Burma that no Burmese female can marry a Muslim, and you may say it's a bit odd, but looking at the long term, it's a rule we should endorse in the UK. When a Muslim male marries, the woman he marries always has to convert, and when they breed, which they inevitably do, those children are brought up in Islam, thus more for the Islamic crusade and takeover of a nation and a country. And you think we should not be worried? And finally, from Darth Vader to jelly donuts, weird new species names abound. Researchers sometimes turn to celebrities and pop culture for naming inspiration. It's been reported on the National Geographic site. When you have to name some 65 new species at once, it pays to get creative. That's how the Darth Vader beetle, or Agathidium vaderi, came to grace a scientific publication in 2005. We had exhausted the useful descriptive names, said Quentin Wheeler, a researcher at Arizona State University in Phoenix, who helped describe the beetles. So that gives you license to get a little more inventive. While taxonomists, scientists who describe and name species, try to bestow names descriptive of the new organism, there is also ample evidence that they like to have fun with their task. Wheeler and colleague Kelly Miller are responsible for a genus of slime mould beetles that include jelly donut, jelly bean, jelly belly, jelly donut, jelly bean, jelly belly, jellyfish and jelly roll. Kelly deserves the blame or credit as you choose, said Wheeler with a laugh. It's a kind of tongue-in-cheek reference to their food source. The beetles in the jelly genus feed on the immature jelly-like stage of slime moulds. Wheeler chose to name the Darth Vader beetle after the Star Wars villain because the insect's shiny black head and slit-like eyes reminded him of the movie character. Terry Irwin, an insect researcher who specialises in beetles at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, has named almost 300 species in a genus of beetles called Agra. Irwin noted that he's got about 1,500 species in the Agra genus, still awaiting names in the cabinet right outside his office door. And every time he goes collecting, he finds more new beetles. This is a genus with endless species, he says. The group includes species like Agra Sasquatch, named for its big feet. Irwin named its sister species Agra Yeti. Two others bear the names Aggravation and Aggravate. Irwin insists he wasn't particularly annoyed when he named the two sister species. It was just to use aggravation because it went with Agra, he said. Yet another beetle is named Agra Ichabod for Ichabod Crane, the main character in Legend of Sleepy Hollow, because the beetle Irwin used in his description of the species was missing its head. All the old guys who were strict Latin namers, I've outlived them all, Irwin said. Since he's the only one left working to describe all the new Agra species, no one criticises his name choices anymore. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very good night.